Welcome to the A to Z of Licensed Games, a series of vids about games that take something from something else. Now, when I started this project, my main aim was to cover good games. But as time's passed, however, my focus has shifted a little towards games that are perhaps a bit more flawed. Last episode's Indiana Jones was kind of a break from that, and Fate of Atlantis was so good that I found that I didn't really have all that much to say that was new about it. Jurassic Park Trespasser, on the other hand? Yeah, this could go on for a bit. Because Trespasser could have been the greatest FPS ever made. When it was first revealed, it was far beyond anything else out at the time, 1998 by the way. Not just for the graphics, but for its intelligent dinosaur AI and its groundbreaking physics engine, the likes of which just had not been seen at that point. It promised so much, and ultimately it couldn't even slightly deliver on those promises. The curse of the Times struck once again, and the developers simply ran out of time. The released game was a crushing disappointment, with very awkward controls, quite a lot of bugs, and lousy optimization that would turn most of the day's computers into liquid shit. The majority of people couldn't run it, and those that could weren't exactly all smiles about it. Some said it was one of the worst games ever made even. Now I don't agree with that, even if it is, in all honesty, a bad game. But still a groundbreaking title that's worth talking about. Why? Well, let's go back to 1998, shall we? Trespasser puts you in the shoes of Anne, the sole survivor of a plane crash that lands her slap bang on Isla Sorna, or Site B, the Lost World. Sucks to be her, I guess. The island was abandoned years ago while it was still under construction, and Anne has to somehow find a way off the island while dealing with the myriad of dinosaurs that still roam the terrain. Well, velociraptors mainly. Only her incredibly bendy right arm can save her. She uses it for everything, from picking up weapons to pulling crates. She doesn't have a left arm. There were plans to include a left arm, of course, but again, time and bugs put paid to that. Anne's noodle arm is certainly the most mocked aspect of the game. It bends and twists in many unnatural ways, and you can even bend it in such a way that you can shoot yourself. It's quite hard to aim with it too. There's no crosshair to help you out, just your own spatial awareness. Any fight with a raptor is potentially your death. They move very quickly and can knock you down in no time. The game's physics also mean that weapons can easily get knocked out of your hand, a major disaster if you're locked in a fight with these beasts. So yes, the combat in this game can be quite limited and very heavy going. It can be fun, but you've really got to knuckle down and save often. One could say, of course, that the limited fighting is appropriate. Anne does like an adventure and knows a bit about Site B from the books she's read, but she isn't Lara Croft. She's not experienced with guns, and obviously wasn't prepared for this. Whether that justifies the crap factor or not depends on how much you're willing to immerse yourself in the game, and how much you can just let slide. Because the game really does try. It uses a HUD-less interface, regenerating health, famously on the left tit, and the jungle surroundings are, for the most part, beautiful. Aside from the odd stretched texture here and there that just looks ugly, the graphics are really something else. Images like this weren't seen again until about 3 years later when Far Cry came out. The sound design is absolutely fantastic to boot. The jungle sounds like a Herzogian nightmare, and the sound of the guns is really satisfying, always a little different every time you fire. The much lauded physics engine is also a neat touch at points, though they certainly show it off to a ridiculous degree with block puzzle after block puzzle, but it's not the only game that commits such a crime. No, the main things that kill Trespasser are the aforementioned awkward controls, the many silly glitches and bugs, such as the compressed raptor necks or, in some cases, compressed raptor everything, and in the main the fact that most levels just feel unfinished. Raptors are basically the only enemy in the game, aside from a couple of Albertosaurs and T-Rexes, and they can't even follow you inside, spoiling one of the great elements of Jurassic Park. Watching dinosaurs interact with each other can be quite fun, but they seem to behave quite oddly when they face off with you. Levels feel quite bare, and as the game goes on, the ideas basically run out and the game just becomes a slog. All of Trespasser's faults take you out of the zone, and they remind you that this is all just a video game, and when that happens, Trespasser basically fizzles out. On the whole, the game is not good, and only a few months after it came out, the advances it brought to the genre were swept away by Valve's Half-Life. But Trespasser is still an important FPS, and very influential in its own way. Perhaps it just needed another year, or at least another 6 months maybe. Unfortunately, it just wasn't to be. Never had the chance. Is it worth playing 15 years on? Yes, 1,000 times yes. At least to experience it. Because, despite all its faults, Trespasser can at times be really fun. You just really have to have an accepting, understanding personality to deal with a lot of it. In the end, there's no other FPS like it. And it's up to you to decide whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Jurassic Park is another fairly decent franchise for tie-ins, with quite a wide range of titles to boot, not just the usual action fare. Although there is, of course, plenty of that. Good job that Jurassic Park on the Mega Drive is one of the better side-scrollers on the system. A very fast-paced, challenging title with the inspired decision to let you pick either Dr. Grant or a raptor. The sequel, Rampage Edition, is if anything even harder, with much bigger stages to boot, but if you like one then guess what, you'll like the other. The SNES game is an odd little beast. It plays in a top-down style, but there's also 3D first-person sections, and a fair bit of puzzling mixed with general survival. It's a very tough and quite frustrating game, but it does appeal to some people. It's okay, I guess. The best Jurassic Park game, however, has to be Jurassic Park Operation Genesis for the PC, a simulation game. Simple idea, and thankfully, someone did it. It's theme park only with dinosaurs. What else can you say, really? Oh yeah, and you can accidentally on purpose remove a bit of the security fence while visitors are still in the park. I do quite like this one. It's a very, very good game. As for the rest of the honourable mentions, well, it's a bit of a mixed bunch. The lack of a decent Judge Dredd game has always been a bit of a disappointment to me. This Amiga game is perhaps the closest, but it's still quite crap and bland. It's basically just another side-scroller at the end of the day. Alas, we've yet to see the Dredd game that easily could be made. I had all kinds of trouble with Jackie Chan related games, so he's represented by good old-fashioned Jackie Chan's Action Kung Fu, shown here for the PC Engine. Decent little platformer this, with very good graphics and music. The NES version is perhaps better known, but this one definitely has the edge over it. Jaws Unleashed for the PS2 next. Now every other Jaws game is absolutely horrid, but this one at least lets you play as the shark. The folks who did Echo the Dolphin, for it is them, decided to get very nasty indeed. The camera does kinda kill the game, but charging into boats and eating divers is undeniably a lot of fun. And finally, here's Journey. I do believe that this is the first game that had a band's license on top of it, and it's kinda something. The game's style is, well, look, the band's faces are pasted on top of those sprites. The band's actual faces. I just don't know what else to say. I mean, the game's ultimately a fairly middling selection of minigames, but those graphics, well, they're truly hilarious. Now, today's Shitroom title isn't actually all that shit, but I can't really think of a more appropriate place for it. Jackass is basically the definition of a show you either love or hate. It's a bunch of guys hurting themselves and each other for your amusement. Nothing more. Some find it hilarious, even oddly endearing, and others would say that it's everything one with the world, that if John Logie Baird had known that at some point in the future that Jackass would be transmitted on the thing that he created, he'd have taken a hammer to his prototype and then shot himself. Now I've heard both arguments made in the past. Me? Well, I used to watch a lot of MTV around the time that Jackass was on, and as a result, watching someone getting hit in the balls will never, ever stop being funny. So I think you know which side of the fence I'm on. Now, the idea of turning Jackass into a game is kinda silly. I mean, how do you possibly turn something that's basically a series of short, unconnected vignettes into a cohesive video game? Not an easy thing to do. However, these were the days when the Wii was riding high, and while this game oddly never came out for Nintendo's machine, the answer was crystal clear. Minigames. Lots and lots of them. You play minigames and earn more money the better you do, and a bunch of minigames comprises a single episode of the show. It does sound like a recipe for a game that's very shit indeed, but truth be told, quite a few of the minigames are fun. if only because they consist of hilariously violent stunts like falling down a cliff or knocking people off a big frickin' building. Geez, you can even catapult yourself into a basketball hoop. This would certainly make for quite a cool party game, I reckon, if you ain't too prissy about that sort of thing. The more rhythm button combo based games are actually quite shit as it goes, but a good half of the games I played amused and entertained me. Still, it is a shitworm title, even if, to be honest, it's not all that bad. Why? Well, why not? It's Jackass. Highlighting it as the featured title would just be inappropriate, and it's a hell of a lot more interesting than the actual terrible games that I played for this letter. It's a game where you can dive into a pile of elephant dung, crass beyond belief, filled with loud, awesome punk rock and farting in your face every step of the way. It doesn't just belong in the shit room, it wants to be in the shit room. It bathes in it. Back when I did the letter C, I put Celebrity Deathmatch in the shit room because it failed as an MTV game. It didn't go far enough. And Jackass goes in the shit room because it nails it. It's as grim and rude and crass as it can be. A total MTV game. But this time, I give the honour out with a smile on my face. But do the boys care? Nah, probably not. They've got shit pouring out their ears as it is. But now, I'm off to chase a midget down the high street. The next video will be a street fight between famous RPGs, more band-based games, and quirky Japanese platformers. Who'll come out on top? Well, you'll just have to wait and see, won't you? But until then, thanks for watching, and wherever you are, whoever you be, have a good one, and take care. And I'll see you next time.